Hey, welcome. So, today we're jumping into a topic that's way bigger than just trees and animals. I mean, it's really about us, about our own survival. We're going to be talking about our forests, our wildlife, and this incredibly complex system that, well, keeps our whole planet and us alive.
Okay, let's start with a little thought experiment. Just picture it for a second. You wake up tomorrow morning and it's all gone. No trees, no birds chirping, even the air feels wrong. Could we actually survive that? Seriously, could we make it? That question. That's why we have to talk about this.
So to really get why a world like that is just impossible, we have to start with the basics. We need to understand the system itself. And it all begins with this incredible idea, the web of life.
Now, at the heart of this whole thing is a word you've probably heard, biodiversity. It's just a fancy way of saying all the different kinds of life on Earth. Plants, animals, tiny little microorganisms. But the key phrase, the part that changes everything, is at the very end there. A network of interdependence. Nothing, and I mean nothing, lives in a bubble. Everything is connected.
The best way to think about it is like a giant, super intricate spider's web. And humans, we're just one thread in that whole structure. Now, you know what happens when you snap one of those threads, right? The whole web shivers. It gets weaker, less stable. Well, that's exactly what our planet's ecosystem is like.
And that shivering, that weakening of the web, that's not just a nice little analogy anymore. That's really happening. Which brings us to the crisis. Because right now, a lot of strands are breaking, and the whole system is under some serious stress.
So why is this happening? Well, let's be honest. The causes are overwhelmingly us. We're tearing down habitats for our cities and farms. We're hunting and poaching illegally. We're just taking too many resources, way faster than nature can replace them, and polluting the place while we're at it. It's like we're attacking the very system that supports us from all sides at once.
When humans become careless, nature becomes helpless. That's a pretty blunt way to put it, but it's true. The good news is, our story doesn't have to end with helplessness. So let's look at how we've started to respond.
So, how in the world do you tackle a crisis this big? Well, the first response is usually the official one, right? The top-down approach. When a problem gets this bad, governments have no choice but to step in with some serious laws.
And in India, the big turning point was the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972. This thing was a complete game changer. For the very first time, it created one single nationwide list of protected animals, made hunting them illegal, cracked down on the wildlife trade, and, most importantly, it created the legal framework to protect their homes.
Now, if you want to understand just how urgent this law was, just look at these two numbers. This is what happened to tigers in India. At the start of the 20th century, we think there were around 55,000. By 1973, that number had crashed to just over 1,800. I mean, look at that. That's not a decline, that is a free fall, an absolute catastrophe in the making.
So, staring down the very real threat of losing its national animal for good, India launched Project Tiger. And this wasn't some small, quiet little program. No way. This was one of the biggest, most ambitious wildlife campaigns the world had ever seen.
The goals were pretty straightforward. Goal number one, obviously, save the tiger from disappearing forever. But here's the really brilliant part. It wasn't just about saving one animal. It was about making sure they could survive in their natural homes, which meant you had to protect the entire forest, the whole ecosystem that supports thousands of other species too. Now, to manage all this, forests were legally sorted into three main types. You've got reserved forests. Think of these as the crown jewels, the most valuable and most strictly protected areas. Then there are protected forests, which are still shielded from being destroyed any further. And finally, unclassed forests, which are all the other bits and pieces, often looked after directly by the local communities living there.
But here's the thing. Laws, no matter how powerful, are only one piece of the puzzle. The other, and arguably more important part, has to come from the ground up.
Conservation is not done by government alone. You gotta let that one sink in. Because real lasting change, the kind that actually sticks, it only happens when the people who live in and depend on these forests become their biggest champions. And this isn't just a nice idea. It really works. I mean, look at this. In Sariska, you had villagers using the government's own law to stop a mining project. And all were, folks in 5 villages got together and just created their own sanctuary with their own rules. And then you have these legendary movements like Chipko, where people literally hug trees to save them, or Bij Pachaw Andolan, which fought to preserve traditional crops.
This is people power in action.
You know, sometimes the best protection doesn't come from a law book or a protest at all. It comes from something much, much older: belief. All across the country, there are these places called sacred groves. They're patches of forest that have been left completely untouched for generations, not because of a rule, but because people believe they're home to gods and spirits. It's a powerful reminder that we can protect nature through respect, not just regulations.
Eventually, the government saw just how effective this community-driven approach was and made it official with something called joint forest management. The idea is simple but brilliant. Local communities officially partner with the forest department to protect and restore forests. And in return, they get a share of the benefits, like the right to collect fruit or medicinal plants. It totally changes the game. People go from being just users of the forest to its owners and protectors.
So, we've seen the top-down legal approach, and we've seen the bottom-up power of people. So what's the big lesson here? Well, the real solution, the magic, happens right where those two things meet.
This is really the most important point of all. Neither of these approaches works that well on its own. If you have laws but the local people aren't on board, they'll just be ignored. And if you have community action without any legal support, it can be easily crushed. Real success only happens when you have both working together. It's a true partnership between laws and values.
Ultimately, all of this, the laws, the projects, the protests, it all leads back to a very simple, very profound truth. We can pass all the laws we want, but if our fundamental thinking about our place in the world doesn't change, we're always just going to be fighting fires. The real conservation work begins right up here, inside our own heads.
Which brings me to one last question, and this one's for you. Let's forget about the huge government programs for just a minute. What's one small, real thing that you can do, right where you live, to help strengthen just one single strand in that incredible web of life? The answer to that question might just be the most important conservation plan there is. Thanks for tuning in.